Just a technical thing. Can you were probably not supposed to know, but tomorrow at 11 there is the off-the-record briefing on the Eurogroup, and I mean, is it possible to make an effort to make it conciliable? Because I would like, and I'm not the only one, I think, to go to both the briefings. ETS is, the electricity is important. Okay.
It's getting the message. Is it true that we will? Okay, we will discuss with our colleagues across the street, and then we will adjust accordingly the time slot. Okay. Yes, Eleni.
We just bumped into representatives of the Greek opposition party now in the entrance. Are you aware of any meetings with Mr. Juncker or other commissioners taking place today?
Yes, I can confirm that President Juncker will meet later today, I believe 2:30, a delegation by the opposition party, Nea Dimokratia. And I can also confirm that tomorrow at 10:30, the President has agreed to welcome here in Berlaymont Stαύρο Θεοδωράκη, the President of the Topotami River Party. Anything else we can help you with, Jurek?
Two questions, a follow-up. What from the President's side will be his aim, his objective in receiving and meeting opposition parties' delegates? And the other question, President Tusk just tweeted that he favors a deal which includes debt sustainability part. So do you consider there's a move from the creditors' side after IMF, which positions was known already? President Tusk, is there an evolution on this question?
On your first question, I think that everybody knows that the President Juncker said it repeatedly, that he has the Greek people in his mind permanently through this process. The Greek people are expressed by the government and the political parties representing them. President Juncker is always eager to listen to political leaders from a country that is so close to his heart and listen to them and listen to their views, especially at such a difficult and critical moment. On your second question, I haven't seen anything, and it's my policy not to comment on anything that happens whilst I am on the podium. But what I can tell you is take you back to President Juncker's press conference after the Euro area summit, where he clearly said, where he reminded as we have done here in this room, the components of what could have been a deal. And these components, I can refresh in your memories, was of course an agreement on prior actions and conditionality, an agreement that would safeguard the financing needs of Greece, and an agreement on debt sustainability under the understanding that that would come, as the President said, later in October, provided that the other conditions would have been met. Yes, Thanasios.
With the earlier touch on Greece. Are you confident that, given the circumstances and time, we will be able to breach the couple of requirements for this month? Even so, the big negotiation for the third bailout may not be concluded on that time. Do you have a plan? Do you have any preferred scheme of how Greece is going to pay the ECB and the IMF in time? Thanks.
Look, I think that for those of you who have followed our exchanges during these months and weeks and months, one of the lessons to be drawn that one does not have to be very emotional in this, very hopeful or fearful. Or I think that we have always avoided going into this discussion. What I think we should do now is concentrate on the facts and on the sequence of events as this was traced after the Greek referendum and the Euro area summit last Tuesday night. Prime Minister Tsipras committed to present a new request for a program within the framework set by the ESM treaty, including strict policy conditionality. This arrived yesterday. Second stage, the ESM asked the Commission to assess whether the conditions of the Article 13 of the ESM Treaty are there, and we're doing it. Stage 2, once this assessment is there, the Greek government would have to send, as we call it, conclusive proposals, which will then be assessed by the institutions ahead of a Eurogroup, a Euro summit, and an EU summit in the weekend. This is where we are. Time is what it is. I think that we should stick to facts and to this sequence of events, and then we will have time to take the most emotional, if you like, evaluation approach that you're suggesting once we know that whether this sequence has been complied upon as we're expecting it to be. Yes, Rick.
On this sequence, point 2, the Commission has been asked for an assessment. When will this assessment be ready? When will it be presented, and to whom?
The assessment, of course, has been asked from the European Stability Mechanism. The Commission will assess Greece's current financing needs, and together with the IMF, as asked by the ESM, will also assess the sustainability of Greece's current debt levels. And our assessment will be sent to the one that asked for it, which is the governing board of the ESM. Sorry? In time for the Eurogroup to consider. Yes, Anne.
Excuse-moi.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused here, and a bit tired too. What are you expecting to happen this evening? Yesterday you had certain events. You're expecting something this evening. I'm a bit lost. What's going to happen?
Je vois nos confrères les interprètes qui...
I'm not going to repeat this in French because we have interpretation into French, especially for you.
On attend que la deuxième étape que je viens de décrire.
Tonight we're expecting the second stage that I've just described. The proposals from the Greek government, I called these conclusive proposals. These should reflect the necessary conditionality to allow the Eurogroup to be able to look into the program that has been requested of the Greek government. I would just like to know whether or not the Greek authorities, in drawing up their proposals, who are in contact with Commission officials, people who they've been working with this dossier, have they had any contacts about the referendum? Well, the proposals we're expecting for tonight are Greek proposals. They are proposals that the Greek government has to have the ownership of, their proposals. So it's important that Athens should draft these. But as you will be aware, since 2010, the Commission has gathered a wealth of knowledge, technical knowledge, and if there are any questions, any points that we can help to clarify, we are, of course, prepared to help. But the proposed reforms expected by Eurozone leaders are an obligation incumbent upon the Hellenic authorities. Ivan.
It seems that the member of the Commission more involved in the assessment of the Greek proposal and in the negotiation in general are Mr. President Juncker, Vice President Dombrovskis, and Commissioner Moscovici. Since they have all expressed themselves in favor of the yes vote in the Greece referendum, are they in the position to be independent in this very important step of the negotiation, or considering that institutionally the Commission should be independent, is it the case to change the team that is going to be involved in the negotiation with more independent and effective commissioner?
The governing board of the ESM that asks for the Commission to assess is much more convinced than you are of our independence. And frankly, I prefer to have the confidence of the governing board of the ESM. Yes, Cécile.
Christine Lagarde, je crois, parle de restructuration.
Christine Lagarde has spoken of restructuring the debt. Is the Commission prepared to table debt restructuring rather than open up negotiations on refinancing conditions? Cécile. I think I've explained what the President said, and that sets out the Commission's position on that matter. I don't want to comment on comments made by others. I would repeat, the IMF will be involved in the debt sustainability assessment that the ESM has been requesting. As to the rest, well, I'd prefer to stop there, but I would recall that, as you'll be aware, as of the 1st of July, the IMF is no longer involved in the Greek monetary program, but the IMF is still involved until the end of March or April 2016. Jean-Jacques.
Une question sur la façon dont...
This is a question about how the proposals are dealt with when they reach here. Will they go straight to the creditors? Is the Commission going to give an opinion, even informally, to allow the Greek government to amend them, change them if necessary? Will there be any give and take when the creditors look into the proposal? Or will the first decision-making body be the Eurogroup? Yes. I prefer not to jump any stages. I would prefer these conclusive proposals to get here first, to arrive. And I think the most appropriate context for what you've said will be the Eurogroup in cooperation with the three institutions. This will ensure that there is the necessary time to examine, consider, and go into the proposals and to bring about the conditions to ensure unanimous agreement on the part of the Eurozone. This should be the result of this job of work. For months now, the Commission has been working in order to achieve this objective, bring about the conditions for a unanimous agreement. Let us hope that we can achieve success.
If the Commission puts together a humanitarian package for Greece and it goes ahead, does that mean Commissioner Stylianides would take charge of that operation, in addition to his various responsibilities in parts of the developing world? Thank you.
The answer is a clear no. Commissioner Stylianides is in charge of humanitarian and crisis response, third countries, and this has nothing to do with Greece or the Eurozone. I think that there is a certain terminological confusion, if you like, since Tuesday night. There is clearly that, as the President himself said on Tuesday, and Mina, I think, very well explained yesterday, there are preparations on all scenarios, and we don't feel now that the need is to discuss publicly specific elements. There is a social dimension, a social emergency, if you like, in certain parts of Greek society, but this is not the moment now for this. This is the moment to have an agreement. Anything else or change subjects? Alistair.
Yes, you're going to get a Greek plan tonight. Before Sunday, does the Commission want or expect the Greek Parliament to have reviewed those proposals, taken any prior actions, passed legislation, debated the proposals?
Alistair, I'm not going now to speculate or anticipate decisions that the Eurogroup will have to decide once the assessment of the Greek conclusive proposals is made. This is for our ministers there in the Eurogroup to decide, but first there is the clear sequence that I try to trace for you today so that everything is done in order. Lorenzo.
It's a sort of follow-up. there has been this agreement between among all the parties except KKE and Golden Dawn, and the agreement is quite clear on the conditions for the reforms that have to be performed. My question is the agreement by the Parliament, the approval by the Parliament, considered as one of the elements that will make it credible, the whole package? I mean, if the Greeks are presenting the package of reforms, do they have to present also a sort of calendar when they consider that that could be approved? Since they have anyway the big majority of the Parliament with them, Tsipras is acting with the mandate of all the parties except the two that I mentioned. And second thing, in that agreement, the debt sustainability is clearly mentioned. It is one of the elements. President Juncker is meeting some of the leaders of the opposition. So don't you think that this should be anyway part of the deal, since all the Greek parties are behind that?
My dear Lorenzo, you're asking the questions I have already answered differently. I can give it a try if you like, but without being repetitive. On debt sustainability, I think I made it very clear what's the President's position and the Commission position on this. On the question of the sequence of timing, of parliamentary timing, I replied, I think, to Alistair. And I said that this is something that the Eurogroup will decide once the assessment of the proposals per se has been completed. And there is a sequence and there is an order. And of course, I understand that there is a logical temptation now to anticipate what Eurogroup decisions may look like, but this is not materially or institutionally possible in the Commission press room. Then, as to the degree of the political commitment of the political forces in Greece that you raise, I think it's an important thing that the Greek political forces are now coming to a certain understanding on the stakes and on the historic moments that the country finds itself in. That's a positive sign, but of course it's not for the Commission to go into a comment or a public position on individual positions by parties, as this will become very evident in the course of the parliamentary proceedings to follow. Ryan.
Thanks, Margaritis. It's back on the humanitarian aid question. If it got to that point, would you use the EU civil protection mechanism, or is it some other sort of budget from the EU budget margins that you would use? And I ask it just because the civil protection mechanism and the emergency response coordinating center, they were used for forest fires inside Europe, as well as disasters outside of Europe. And any country in the world is allowed to call on the mechanism. So, you know, it might not be your preference, but presumably the Greek government could call upon it, and you would have to answer whether you're going to use it or not.
Ryan, I understand and your interest, but first of all, we don't comment here on questions that start with ifs. We are now in plan A. We're trying to make it work. So the only thing that I can say to your question, and again repeating that what was our position here yesterday, Tuesday night at the Council, is that we are ready for all scenarios. But we are working hard to make scenario 1, plan A, work. Anything else for today? Other subjects? Yes, Marco, go ahead. Take us elsewhere, please.
Oh, thank you. Not that I do not.
It's on Greek issue. I need a couple of clarifications about your answers, because you didn't look here when I need a couple of clarifications. In the question of Giovanna, you said that the Commission is ready to help to Greek government to elaborate the proposal, but you didn't say if the Commission, the experts from the Commission are helping to Greece. I mean, according to some reports, some experts from France are helping to elaborate this proposal. I want to know if also there are people from the Commission working on that. And second of all, in the meeting that Juncker is going to have with the political Greek parties, I want to know what is going to be on the table. I know that President Juncker is eager to talk to everybody, and he is really focus in this issue, but I want to know if the topic of the conversation will be the emergency plan, the general situation, what is going to be on the table.
On the role of the Commission, my reply to Giovanna was crystal clear, and she understood it, I think. I don't have to revisit it. On the role of the French experts, you probably should address your question to the French authorities. On the discussions that President Juncker has with political leaders, with all political leaders, there is not one fixed agenda, and we don't switch from point 1 to point 2. This is an important moment, and President Juncker has to listen, wants to listen. Thank you all. See you tomorrow.